started by you. Perfect. A number of people had registered for the seminar but weren't able to make it. So it looks like we've got about 25 here, which statistically is what we typically get. We had 53 people register, so 25 is about what we expect. So everyone will receive a copy of this webinar and the slides and a link to the feedback form and a follow-up email probably later today or tomorrow. And I can ask you to consider providing that feedback so we can continue to strengthen our webinars. So my name is Melanie Bauer. I am the Wellness Coordinator for AMANS. It's Financial Literacy Month and the theme is Money on Your Mind, Let's Talk About It. And the timing is so perfect for this webinar. We're going into a very expensive season and there's a lot of guilt and emotions that come with holiday spending. So financial wellness, which is one of our pillars at AMANS, starts with financial literacy. And the workplace really is a powerful place to bring this information. A recent stat that I heard was an alarming 80% of employees are grappling with financial stress, which really diminishes people's focus and productivity at work and really places a heavy toll on mental health. So the two of them are definitely connected, and you know that one of our focuses is on mental health. So I'm so pleased to introduce you to this phenomenal organization and two of their employees, MoneyPath Atlantic. I had the opportunity to recently take a five-session facilitator training, which we will be promoting to our municipal units in the event we have employees interested in being a financial literacy champion and facilitator. We're also going to be offering a series of financial literacy sessions in 2025, and it might include things like savings, credit basics, credit report, the wise consumer, taxes, debt, those types of things. So close to the end of the seminar, I'm actually going to ask folks who are on the call now to identify kind of the top 2 priority topics that you would like to see, so that we can send a poll and work on those series. So we'll get started with the introductions. We have Beth Carmichael, and Beth started her career as a loans officer in Sydney, Nova Scotia, before she headed north to the Arctic to lead territorial business development initiatives. And she quickly learned the bottom lines she was reviewing represented more than simply dollar amounts. So over the years, she's continued to support social enterprise, entrepreneurship, and employment projects. And MoneyPath Atlantic is Beth's latest community project. And being a mom to 3 strong young women remains one of her favorite spaces in life. And then we have Jim Mustard. He was one of the facilitators of the training that I took. He brings a lifelong passion for building inclusive communities. He's a former Inverness County Councillor, leader for the Early Years Program, team support for Veterans Affairs, active community volunteer, and respected visitor to, can you pronounce that for me, Jim? Wakagmo. Oh, I muted everyone. Oh no, I have to figure out how to unmute or our facilitators won't be able to speak. Okay. In addition to his huge community contributions, Jim loves his farm and the home it has provided for the children he has fostered and raised. So how do I unmute everyone? Let's see. Maybe someone can put it in the chat. I've never unmuted a whole group of people before.
They can individually unmute themselves, Melanie.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so over to Beth. Oh, I think they were trying to figure out how to unmute themselves.
It's just in the top right at the very top of your screen. You just click on the little mic and it'll become unmute.
I'm unmuted.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim.
Okay. So thanks, Melody.
Beth, did you figure it out? It's right next to the share 2 icons over from the leave. It's a little mic.
Okay.
Sharing, so now maybe I will share
There
again.
you go.
There you go. Perfect. We have audio. My apologies for that.
Ta-da.
Okay.
So thanks, Melanie, for the introduction. And as I say, as a municipal councillor, I'm heartened by Melanie's role and these staff positions that I don't really think existed in my time on council. And I think the strength of the municipal government comes from the people who are now seeing the determinants of health as part of a package that we can be part of. Sometimes it's in our wheelhouse, sometimes it's not. But in my 2.5 years now with MoneyPath, everyone should have this in their wheelhouse for their internal workings and externally facing to support our community's understanding the importance of us working together to strengthen people's health and well-being around money. So thanks, Melanie, and a really exciting time to join this
Absolutely.
conversation. Wonderful.
Wonderful. So passing it over to Beth.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Jim, and thank you for the technical support, which I always appreciate at the beginning. And as I said to Melanie, we usually run the Zoom platform, so Teams is just slightly different. So thanks, Jim, and Jim and I are delighted to be here. And today's trails, we just wanted to introduce who is MoneyPath Atlantic for those who may not know. What is wellness and finance in terms of how they're connected. And the practical side is 7 tips to build financial wellness. What can you do now, or what could you add into some of the things that you're looking at as you look to build that piece of life?
So I think one of the key things that we've discovered in our work in MoneyPath, and we just held a conference last week, which was tremendously successful, is we're bringing it out of the closet. We're bringing our financial health and well-being out of the closet, and the initial stages is just to talk about it. In talking about it, we open up the opportunities to learn from each other and find our own priorities within that. So what we've really found exciting is just like Melody was part of the online training, those conversations, because we are not the experts in your life. We're just opening up the stories that allow you to develop where the needs are and who are the people to help us. So this has been a really great, exciting time. In Financial Literacy Month, we've opened that up with a number of different opportunities, both in First Nations, working with teachers in schools, and across organizations in the province, and now excited to be with the municipal internal team.
Thanks, Jim. So just like the sign says, we're going to talk about it today, as Melanie indicated with their AMAN's commitment to Financial Literacy Month. So who is MoneyPath Atlantic? So MoneyPath Atlantic was launched in April 2026 as a 4-year initiative funded by your tax dollars and mine under Employment and Social Development Canada. We are funded as a free educational initiative with a mission to increase the number of financial literacy access points in our communities. And as everyone knows here, especially in this circle, there are many, and there are many that reside outside of Halifax and Dartmouth. So we have to do this strategically, and we're doing that by building a network of financial literacy trail guides across Nova Scotia. And Melanie is one of our newest members, as she has said. And absolutely, where anybody is interested in the call around financial literacy and maybe hosting some space, certainly reach out to Jim and I afterwards or through Melanie. We can send more info. So we're here today as part of AMAN's plan to help build the knowledge, skills, and confidence of AMAN's employees around the topic of money and explore ways to keep money conversations happening in our communities.
So this slide just gives you a bit of a way that we start to create a bit of a visual around financial literacy. So it's not so word heavy and cumbersome to kind of introduce where we start in our own individual lives or where we start as a team that wants to train and help others. So we've created this ecosystem where it looks at starting. The center is always going to be your relationship with money. What are your priorities? Is it debt? Is it savings? Is it just getting that budget started so that we can see where our lives are going? And then around it are all the constellations that you might reach out to on your journey while you're looking at that center core of what's going on within my life and my family's life that I really need to get a grip on. So there's 10 modules, which we do in the training, which 2 in the center and then 8 around the outside. And then the other statistic that's on there, 74% of Canadians want to better understand their financial resilience and confidence in how to improve it. The other 26% are lying. This- I'm
Love it.
not being serious there. But anyways, we know that the majority of people need help now. And so this is it. You start wherever you're at, but you might bump into every one of the 10 pieces of what encompasses our way of envisioning financial literacy.
Thanks, Jim. So, what is financial wellness? And just before we get to this definition, we wanted to have a look at some statistics that have come to us from the Financial Resilience Institute of Canada.
So in this, and I think it echoes what Melanie was saying, but 38% of Canadians have a negative or zero household savings rate, and 26% have a liquid savings buffer of less than 3 weeks. So that's it just shows that there is 2 out of every 5 that we're walking by in our hallways that are experiencing pretty limited buffers. As a result of the increased cost of living, 58% of Canadians have drawn down on their savings to pay for essential expenses. So that's a fairly recent statistic coming at us as inflation has hit us all pretty hard. And financial stress makes 46% of households, almost 1 in 2, physically unwell and causes money fights for 40% of couples. So financial stress affects 42% of employees' productivity or performance at work, yet only 34% of employees rate their employer highly for supporting their financial wellness. So kind of all of these just say, we got room to improve. There's good things happening, but we can really use those statistics to leverage why we're in this together.
Yeah. And I think, Jim, you're absolutely, we are all facing these regardless of our income levels. And, Jim, I added one more stat. So we had Asil Al-Baba, who's a terrific financial therapist that spoke at our conference last week. And interestingly, she said 90% of our money decisions are emotional, which is another interesting statistic. So, I'd be curious, do you agree or disagree with that? And, when you think about money decisions, and there's a lot of tough ones right now, but if you've got young children, I need the brand name versus the no name. The family's going on a holiday, I better go. Somebody needs the newest iPhones coming out in next month, if it's not out at the end of the month, as an example. So it's a big piece of decisions around money. And again, it goes back to, let's start opening up more conversations to talk about it and to support each other, and that there's tremendous expertise and insights sitting all around our tables. So, just some context. There are many definitions, and we don't want to overcomplicate the session, but we talk a lot about financial wellness. And I think, that previous slide, bullet number 4, AMANS has got financial wellness up as one of your pillars, which is awesome. And they've got some beginning resources there, and their commitment to building this piece out is reflected, I believe, in, Melanie supporting our conference last week, taking our training and inviting us in today. So we talk a lot about financial wellness, and what is it exactly? So here's some of the definitions. And so if you start at number 3 at the bottom, financial health, it's a result of our money behaviors and decisions, right? So it's the decision making. The next one, financial resilience, is the ability to get through hardship, stressors, and shocks, whether it's a flood or somebody gets sick and we have to step in, or an unexpected job loss, as an example. Can we move through that? And financial wellness is a beautiful place to be, in that I think we could say we would sleep soundly at night because we know we have a good income, we've got some pension funds set aside, I've got money to pay the bills, and we have some of the extras to do some of those things that aren't necessarily needs, but things that make life very enjoyable. So it all brings us to, financial wellness. It's a personal journey. No question, Jim often says money is the game of life, that there are steep climbs as we go along this money trail in life, and there's unknown trails, which is why financial literacy becomes important, that people bring certain skill sets and pieces of knowledge. The programming is intended to round out those pieces. So ultimately, when we land on the path of financial wellness, we do have less stress, and we also perform better in our workplaces. So just as an FYI, that QR code, the Canadian Financial Resilience Institute, is a newer institute, at least to us at MoneyPath. The QR code will take you to their site, and there is a financial resilience score that you can receive by answering some questions. So as Melanie said, we'll share the slides. You can go for reflection and helps us understand what is financial resilience just by completing some of those questions. So we're going to change things up now and look at some practical tips that can help you keep building your financial wellness. And I think what you'll find is not rocket science. It's just being attentive to here's some things that genuinely can improve your financial wellness. So we've got 7 of our favorite tips. And, the tip number 1, and Jim, I have this not for you, but is this yours or mine?
I was giving you that one.
Okay.
Beth and I haven't done this together. We work pretty intensely together, but we haven't done a presentation together. I don't think ever. So this is kind of fun.
It's been a while. We Jim and I, like I say, we started this project a couple of years ago, but yeah, everybody's got a lot of great moving parts moving. So,
Yep.
Tip number 1 is money priorities. What are yours, and write them down. So I think a lot of us walk around with, in my head, I know what my priorities are, but we do encourage you to write it down. And, for today, for one day, dream a little bit about the future, and for the rainy days, when things happen. My transmission went in Truro a month ago. What do I do? That is not a small bill, as an example. So I've got a rainy day fund to cover off those things, and which gives me some peace of mind. So number 1, money priorities, write them down. Science says writing them down helps guide us along the paths a little more intentionally. And I'm going to say this QR code takes us to one of our favorite financial literacy partners, Prosper Canada. It's a beautiful 2-page tab. And again, you'll get the slides after, but, choosing a goal, my money goal is, or my money priorities are, setting some timelines. What do I need to get there? If I find myself struggling, I'm going to try these things. And I think also, Jim says, in terms of money and budget, sometimes it feels very restrictive, but, dreams do come true. And I think it's great to dream and then to put it in some context of, I'm going to go on that trip to Kilimanjaro in 3 years because I've got some kids to raise, or maybe it's going to be in 5 years, but to write it down. So I find this worksheet is kind of an inspirational sheet, and it just makes us think about money in a different way, and in a way that maybe allows us to dream a little bit outside of just the practicalities of, I've got rent to pay, I've got a car payment, and I have a house payment, and groceries, bills, and maybe soccer fees to pay, as an example. Yeah, and I think the other thing in terms of money priorities, as you write them down, you might want to put down 3 categories, short term, medium term, 2 to 5 years, and longer term, 5+ years. To, for example, I'm going to buy a tablet. I'm going to figure that out over the next 12 months. I'm going to plan to buy a car or to replace my car in the next 2 to 5 years. And I want to keep tucking away some money for retirement. Yeah. So that's tip number 1 is, just think about your money priorities, use that worksheet, and write them down.
So then it comes to like, what is going to help me get those priorities aligned is the budget. So as a municipal councillor, of course, we all have to work with budgets that the team puts together for us to reflect on. And without that, you're really not doing justice to anyone's life, whether you're as a municipal councillor and you're working with a municipal budget, or in a household where you're trying to maintain a quality of life for everyone. So that budget is essential, and yet it comes from that first one. Is what's my motivation? I got to get out of debt. I want to do a vacation. Long-term, want to prepare for retirement. So the budget, this is one of the things that there's a lot of tools to help. And so the link there will take you to the FCAC, and it is a really super interactive and easy to use budget where you can adjust the categories. They've already got all the calculations are done for you. So there's just, it used to be a pencil and a piece of paper and a lot of erasing, to now it's a really quite an easy and interactive process. So there's no excuse on that one. And I think the idea that it comes from a motivation is just the process by which we're laying out the tips. What we need to do is have a team around us that really supports the discipline. And I think the budget is I think it's one of the most time consuming and one of the things to get established. But once it's established, the practices, I think, can become easier. So there is also in the specifics, we are working on a presentation to the community in Wagamon because they're all going to experience a $75,000 per man, woman, and child land claim settlement in December. So we are having a fun evening session with families, children, the students and the families, and it's a way to kind of get the practice. So we're going to talk about their dreams. What are they? And create a bit of a dream list, like your priorities. And then we're going to have budget sheets that may just be on one specific thing, like getting a car. So you can break this down in lots of different ways. And I think that's the way that we can engage people where they're at, to just start to use that and build out the more comprehensive budget that looks at the overall cost of living and the ways that we live our lives in a more comprehensive sense. So that's comment is the big one, but this is the one that we feel is connected to everything else.
And Jim, I think the other thing people find with this budget, depending, if digital literacy is your thing, you can save it, you can share it, you can come back to it. So, you set up your budget, checking in ideally on a monthly basis is a great idea. I think what the other thing people like about it is I don't have to write all the categories down or remember what emergency fund where you want to have that included, an education fund where you've got young people that you're planning ahead for, planning for a car, things you want to save for. The other thing is, income, is it every 2 weeks? So it allows you to customize it that way. And if I can go down to expenses, this is where probably we get the most feedback is, oh, I forgot about that expense. So for example, under communications, you get a phone, you might have cable still, and internet as an example, combined packages, entertainment subscriptions we often miss. So people like this one, and there are many others out there, including one that's on the AMAN site that is put out by the Credit Counseling Society of Canada. So I think, Jim, I added this link. Jim, I don't know if this link will say is the CAA. In terms of budgeting, one of the big budget items is a vehicle here in Nova Scotia. So that CAA site, just as a heads up, especially if you've got somebody young that would like to buy a car, and the awareness they're just being awakened to, if you have a car and you want to park downtown, there's a fee. Or if you have a car, you need insurance, you need licenses, you need gas, and you need maintenance. So this is a really cool calculator for budgeting and for saving purposes, especially where you're also supporting young people or somebody new to buying a vehicle. But you can enter in, for example, Nova Scotia, my annual mileage. I'm going to buy a used Honda Civic. You can certainly make your comments in the chat. And let's say I'm going to go with a 2018 Honda Civic. And I'm okay with starting with 140,000 on my odometer. So it's a Honda, and it is a Civic. And let's go with just the DX 4-door basic model, and know your costs. So this one is, if you've got somebody heading out off to university, needs a car for budgeting for the family or for the individual, it's ballparking. That car should come in around $10,000. It is saying based on gas at $1.50 a liter, your depreciation cost, your maintenance cost, your registration fees, insurance cost, and a monthly car payment. If you're probably to put it over, I'm going to say 5 years. I didn't check that, but you certainly want to know. Owning or leasing for 5 years, so that's correct. And then fuel cost for the year is $3,100. So just in terms of big budget items and looking to nail that budget down into a little tighter realm of figures, I find this tool is a handy one for families that are either buying or introducing a younger, new to driving person to this piece.
Sorry to interrupt you, Beth. Were you trying to share that tool? Just had a couple
Yes.
people saying that they're not seeing it. They're seeing your slide.
Okay. So maybe I did have the site up. I went through the link, but maybe it's still not showing.
Still not showing.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to live in the edge, stop sharing if I can.
Living on the edge. She stopped
No.
sharing.
I stopped sharing. Okay, this one is,
Love the technology.
I know.
are you, what are you seeing now? Just pictures
Just
of
us.
people?
Yeah.
Just us.
Us. Um,
Someone just said in the chat she has to have it open before she shares it.
and
Yeah.
I do. And there we go. Let me see. Okay, select a tab to share. Here we go.
Oh,
Okay, are we
excellent.
okay? So I'm going to go back to reset this one. So this is the CAA calculator, and you'll hear that's a pretty common term, I guess, in the space we're working in, is calculators, online calculators. It makes math easy, and I love them. I love math. My dad was a great math teacher, but I think with calculators, it just makes it easy to play around with numbers. Say, well, what if I push my budget to 12,000 or 10,000 or 8,000? So this CAA driving cost calculator. So here we go. So you just need to put in your province. Annual new or used. So I'm going to run through the same scenario and you can see it. Annual mileage. Let's say we're going to put 30,000 on it. And I had mentioned we would be okay with a 28 Honda Civic with a starting odometer of 140,000 kilometers. And again, I'm going to stick with the Honda and the Civic. And the trim, we're going to go with the basic. So I was amazed when I found this, that they had this much data loaded. And then you click know your costs. And that's where it comes up with the figure. This is the ballpark for that model. And on average, it costs this much to run that car per kilometer. Your fuel cost for the year is here. And like I said, it helps young people especially understand. And then tell them to go in and run the F-150 numbers to compare.
Yeah.
And then the license and registration fees are 114, estimated maintenance costs, things sometimes we forget about, insurance costs, and then the monthly payment of $229 if that was financed over 5 years at about $10,000. So I don't know if there's
Beth,
any.
we just had a question. What is the F-150 cost?
Okay.
You want to see?
Yeah. All right. Let's do that. Can you still see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So we're going to go with the used. I'll say we're going to run that for sure, 30,000. Select, what do we want to go with? A 2020, do we want to go pretty new? 2020, we'll do 2023. Ford F-150. I, to be honest, don't know the difference between those categories, but that's kind of the fun thing. And interestingly, the kinds of trim, I'm going to assume at the top, it may be the least expensive, but I don't know. So here's know your costs for a 2023 F-150. So you can see that $223 payment on a monthly basis moves up to another additional $1,000. Insurance jumps considerably. Maintenance costs are somewhat similar to the older car.
It didn't come up. It's still stuck on the Honda.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
Well, for the sake of brevity, let's keep moving just because we're at 11:30. But you get the idea. You can do the 150. You'll have this slide deck, and you can bring it up, have some fun at home, putting in your Rolls Royce and seeing what it comes up to. Your dream car, your Lamborghini. So I think the thing that Beth is just emphasizing, there's so many tools. It's sometimes the complicated thing is where to find it and when the timing is to find it. So one of the things in MoneyPath is just trying to create a little bit of a mentorship and support around navigating all the different resources that are available. So while the technology is not benefiting us right now, the actual resources are there behind the veil.
Yeah, and you will get that link. And it's kind of fun to go through if you're exploring that area. So yes, in the interest of time, tip number 3 is a peace of mind fund to set one up. And a peace of mind fund is like an emergency fund. The Ontario Securities Commission, you know, we put out links that are tried and trusted service providers. Nobody's going to be scooping your data, or you're not going to be nailed with a schemer looking to say, we got this algorithm, we picked it up, and we need money to access the site. So the Ontario Securities Commission has some really great content. And, you know, life happens, we say, in terms of money. It feels good to know you have funds set aside when you have to jump on a plane to suddenly support a loved one, your car transmission light comes on, as I said earlier, or your job comes to an unexpected close. So it does feel really good when you've got that account. The Ontario Securities Commission is a great source of information, you know, and the tip inside of this is to open a separate account for your emergency fund, your peace of mind fund, so that you keep replenishing it as time goes on. So if you need to take money out to fix your car, then you plan to replenish it. You know, there are some formulas that say, I'm going to say that share this tab instead. Okay, there we go. So can you see the Ontario Securities Commission?
Yeah.
All right. So thank you. Slow learner here. I see how I can switch those tabs. Yay. So the Ontario Securities Commission has a site called Get Smarter About Money. This is their financial literacy piece. It's a really fabulous site. And they have all kinds of information, but, you know, preparing for emergencies, 5 questions to ask yourself. How much do you need? So, you know, how much do you need? I would say open an account and put $20 in it, and already you start feeling better. And then work to build that account a little bit so that you've got an amount that you're comfortable with. And they've got some tips on what to include. You know, some say 3 months to 6 months of income in the event you lost a job, as an example, or you had to step away from the workforce. So it depends. And I say start small and then work towards it. So in terms of financial literacy, you know, it's building your own knowledge and your own skills. So this is a great place where you're looking for more information about preparing for financial emergencies. Yeah. So, and I'm not sure if we'll come back to this site, but I think we will later. Okay, share this tab instead. Okay, so I believe, Jim, we're going to head to tip number 4 and.
So debt, reducing debt. So debt is one of the modules that we deal with, and it is one of the more helpful ones to know that there's good debt, there's bad debt, and then there's really not good debt for anybody. So we kind of help understand what those 3 are, and really strong emphasis on avoiding bad debt, really bad debt, which is like the money marts and the sort of home easy stuff that really seems tempting, especially when you're in a tight place. But so it all comes back to the budgeting and how well you're doing on everything else. But if it happens that you do get into debt, we do have great resources of the Credit Counseling Society. There's an Atlantic branch for that. It's mostly online now, but it's all confidential. There's nobody's in it for anything other than to help people, but that's one of the expert resources that can help consolidate debt and find ways that you can manage debt in a more manageable way, in ways that you can see that there's an end in sight, and maybe reducing some of the really punitive interest rates that you got caught on. So knowing that that's available, that was part of our learning, I think, as a team. Just, boy, that resource that used to be at a door in your community is now online, so it makes it even more accessible. But some people who don't have access online, that's where we become team members in supporting that. And then a really simple but important one is looking at credit card payment calculator to look at the differences in terms of what the cost of a piece of something, like we said, getting an iPad, you need it for your work, whatever you need it for, and then you look at how much you pay monthly and what you end up paying in interest rates. And if you increase it by a small amount, it makes a huge difference. So that's, once again, a tool you can use personally in your life, but also is something where we really help people who have maybe relied on credit a bit too much to understand that some of the upfront benefits really don't pay out. So debt is a big one, and we've got some tools in there. Once again, there are some diagrams just to show what the proportion is of principal interest and the difference that you're paying off when you take an extended period of time by not being able to come up with the amount of payment to pay it down quicker. So debt's a huge one. It's one that you can start at if that's where your life's at, and it'll lead back to budgeting and setting up some priorities. But debt is one of those sleepless nights. And so in our work at MoneyPath, we start wherever you're at. And I think the importance of understanding that debt is associated with a lot of pain, a lot of shame built up around it, and guilt. So we want to really reduce that and saying that we're going to learn from this and we're going to move on. And our learning is going to put us in a better position for the rest of our lives. It's my sermon on debt.
Well, and I think, like you say, Jim, it's probably one of the heaviest balls there in that circle that's spinning around money, priorities, and budgeting. So this one, most people are carrying a credit card, if not everyone these days. I think the new credit card subscribers are newcomers to Canada and youth. So this is a great tool where you have young people maybe that are getting their first credit card and just helping them understand payments and to pay more than the minimum. And just, it says, if you pay the minimum, it's 13 years versus just bump your payment up a little bit, 2 years. And it shows the numbers and kind of a visual side. So it is a really great tool. And as Jim has said, the Credit Counseling Society, you can call them anytime, a very warm voice. You will not be scammed. And was like, I don't know where to start. They will help you figure out the steps. So it's just a great resource, whether it's, something that you want to tap into and better understand, or you hear of somebody that's struggling, you say, hey, give them a call. And we have had people that have made those calls and said, you've changed my life. So it's just a phone call, being able to talk about it. It's a big one. So thanks, Jim. Tip number 5 is credit scores. Check it and increase your score, right? So credit scores for people that TransUnion and Equifax Canada are the 2 agencies or organizations in Canada that are for profit that collect data with your permission and feed it back to banks and dealerships that want to know what's best credit score, and they charge a fee for it. The other 2 sources of credit scores that you may see now with phones popping up is Borrowwell and Credit Karma. And so those also provide a score that's fairly representative of what your score may be. It may be off a little bit. Just a heads up that Credit Karma and Borrowwell, their true mission is not to tell you what your score is, but to say, and hey, by the way, you got a great score. You should borrow money from or buy these financial products. So they're really using it as kind of a front to say, and we have all these great products. So you certainly use it to check your score. Just know that often, I think, Jim, what we saw is people then get bombarded with a lot of texts or emails as a result. So Equifax Canada, if you're looking to better understand that yourself, is a great site. I can share that with you now that I know what I'm doing once it loads. Okay, can we see Equifax there, Jim?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So Equifax, some really, empower yourself with credit and ID education, fraud and identity theft, cybersecurity, credit scores, personal finance, and reports. So lots of good content on there. Again, lots of good reading on your coffee breaks or maybe lunch and learns that Melanie's continuing to put together for everyone. Yeah, and go ahead, Jim.
The key thing that we've learned about credit scores is know where your credit score comes from. So how much is it like having your Visa not maxed out? How much is paying your bills on time? How much is checks on how many people are checking your credit score actually brings your credit score down. So the more knowledge you have around how your credit score is developed, especially if you're a young person starting out, you're a newcomer to Canada, it's good to have what goes into a credit score, where does it come from, and then being able to access your credit score to make sure that things are accurate in there, because it's not always accurate. So because it really does affect a lot of things, the loan rates you get, whether you can rent that apartment, whether you can get a car. So I think what we're talking about here is this is a powerful piece, and it really shows that there's a path forward for you. And the more you understand about the dynamics of what builds a credit score, the more you can take that on. And so it's been a really important module in the online and in the in-person ones that we've done.
And I think checking your credit score is, frauds and scams are over the top. We have a digital currency now, and we have people that are very skilled at figuring out how to take your money so that they have more money in their pocket. So just know, we encourage you also to check your credit report and your score. So you can say, hey, I want to push that up, and I want to make sure that everything is on my report is reflective of who I am, that there's no surprises in there. And, you know, we've even heard cases where, I'm going to say I'm from Cape Breton originally. There are a lot of McDonald's in Cape Breton, and maybe some of you are on the call today, that sometimes identities get mixed. It's very rare, but it's always good to check. And interestingly, if you go through this site, if you go through Get Your Credit Report, and that's the government agency that's going to direct you to where to find those reports, you can get them for free. I think the free versions you have to request through the mail, which, depending on what Canada Post decides tomorrow, could take a while. You can also get them electronically, but there's generally a fee. And interestingly, if there's a breach, so for example, when some of the breaches happened, I think I'm going to say winners, a lot of the customers that were in their database got a free 1 year with Equifax, so people could check the report to make sure their data wasn't corrupted or compromised. But like Jim said, I think check your report with frauds and scams on the go. And as Jim mentioned, a couple of tips to boost your score. Sometimes Myra Lucia with Credit Union Atlantic said a lot of people don't realize your cell phone is directly tied to your credit report. So pay your cell phone on time, pay your credit cards on time. And the other tip is, if you have a credit card, save for $5,000, if you can keep your balance at the end of the month to 50% or less, that will support your credit score. The reason being, the closer you are to the $5,000 amount, then it's interpreted as Beth is pretty much maxing out that credit card. So just some tips in terms of what can influence that. And there's lots of good information on that site.
So in interest of timing, because we do want to have a Q&A, are we only going to noon? Is that the idea? We're not going past lunchtime.
Yep.
So let's just go through this. So savings, once again. So we talked about this as an important piece of being able to, maybe in your money priorities, is to be able to short-term, medium-term, and long-term have a bit of a plan around this. So with Ontario Securities Commission, you get a lot of insight as to where are the tools and best mechanisms to support your savings investment. So Beth's going through that and just showing you. It's a whole research piece. This is the biggest piece, because you want to know what risk you're willing to take and not take when it comes to savings, and what is the return on that savings, and, you know, referencing against the basic inflation costs and seeing if you're even holding your own ground. So there's a lot to savings, but besides the TFSAs, RRSPs, registered disability savings plans, if someone in your family is disabled, knowing about that, our ESPs, education savings plans, and knowing where some of those government savings plans are based and what you need for them, is a tool that we should all be aware of, so that our communities are more of it. They know that these things are available to them in a timely manner. So we've learned a lot of how these are not available to the general public. Their lives are complex enough. So having a guide on this one is one of the more important things. So where that guide is, MoneyPath, Ontario Securities Commission, your local credit union, having some financial advice that you can go on. Looking at savings is a key determinant of success around this one. It's a hard one. It works, but it takes more research than most of it.
The one piece in here is, you know, David Harrison with the Nova Scotia Securities Commission says time is your friend when it comes to investing. So savings are important for those emergency funds. Investing is, you know, have a look at your budget, clear off some debt, and set up your emergency fund, and then have a look at what's left, you know, and start small, but where you can start to put away $50 biweekly, and depending on life, if you can move that up or you get some overtime, you can add a little lump sum in there. But on the Ontario Securities Commission under calculators, there's a compound interest calculator, but that quickly shows you, even though for some of us 25 years seems like a long time, and I'm sort of at that other end of life right now, but it's pretty powerful numbers where you can commit to investing, and it puts you in a really great place once you crest into the 55, 60-year-old age category. So thanks, Jim. Tip 7 is simply, keep talking about money, stay informed, ask for help, find a mentor, and I just popped the CPA goal setting worksheet in there just because some of the titles say, talk to your benefits coordinator, find out what you're eligible for. It may help your budget, and I do believe there's some allowance there to even speak to somebody about money. Find your banker that you like to work with. It may not be your current banker if you don't like them. Myra says always shop around for the person that is going to help you out. And there's a great link to the Nova Scotia Securities Commission. They're a terrific organization. We say sometimes the best kept secret in Nova Scotia, but that will take you directly to a handbook on what to look for in an advisor. So, when you're meeting with an advisor, what kinds of questions should you be asking to make sure you get a match with somebody that can help you and you can check in with. So tip number 7 is just stay informed and don't be afraid to ask for help and find a mentor.
So the 7 tips, and it's just to review them, but setting those priorities, looking at a budget, and setting up something around savings so that you do have a little bit of peace of mind, understanding debt, how to manage it, how to stay away from the bad debt, and looking at, I think that's best said, the credit score. It's just understanding what's involved there and how you can manage to keep yours up. It's only going to benefit you, helping your family understand what it is, newcomers, students, we're all in this together, and build your savings wisely, invest wisely. And I think staying informed, this idea that the only answer here in everything we're doing is community. So developing a community awareness around the importance of financial health and well-being, and it comes from having some sort of open conversations around the water cooler, around the professional development, around the communities that you're serving. It's the same way as a municipal council, we always had GED and literacy support for communities. Let's add financial literacy. Let's find ways to support financial literacy and raise the banner and reduce the sort of stigma attached to talking about money so that we can actually have, I think, a more supportive community for everyone. So I think that's the kind of my rant about how you're perfectly positioned to take this forward, both in your personal and interpersonal lives as municipal employees, and then how we can really raise the flag across our municipalities to strengthen that we're raising the flag of awareness, the importance of this.
And Jim, I'll just add on this slide deck, the QR code will take you to the MoneyPath site and resources. So if you scroll down, just for quick reference, if you lose all the QR codes, don't lose this one. But all the categories, those 10 basic categories are listed here. And for example, in the savings dropdown, the CAA, saving for a car, is in here. And interestingly, the compound interest calculator with the Ontario Securities Commission that I talked about is also here. So there's some great resources there, just so you are aware of where to find them. That's where that QR code will take you.
Takes you. Yes, all those QR codes are going to take you somewhere special. Just remember, there's somewhere special. The end of the rainbow, the QR code.
And financial literacy is really about building your knowledge. So where you want to dig around, there's some great links to some trusted sites that we have gotten good feedback from participants in our program to say they're helpful. So, to go back to, it is Financial Literacy Month for the month of November. I always think it's time because we got a big spending month coming up in December. I love the idea that it's, talking about money, destigmatizing money, which is what we're doing today and what MoneyPath is all about. The part 2 of the campaign is to do one thing. So everybody's busy. How do I take a step? But what's one thing, just to think about that. And if you want, drop it in the chat box and Melanie can track it, not to you personally, but what's one thing that you could do, after you log out today, whether it's opening up a savings account for an emergency fund, maybe it's checking your credit score as an example. But just think about one thing that you can do And if you want, you can add a hashtag and fire that off to FCAC as well.
Or just call us and we'll send you the poster of the ecosystem so you can put that on your wall.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
brighten up your day.
Yeah, and we wanted to say, I think, as Jim said, I think what Melanie's like, yep, I'm coming. Yep, I'll try it out. It's been really a great relationship with AMANS. I think it's beautiful that there's 4 pillars plus social connections on the site. Just know that on the site as well. I'll share this tab. Yeah. These resources, the 7-step budgeting workbook is from the Credit Counseling Society. It is a great workbook. Money and Finances, that's the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, some of the calculators we talked about. And again, there's Credit Counseling Society singled out at the end. And TELUS has got a money piece in there. I'm not entirely clear what that is, but I did talk to them. So there is an opportunity for a few conversations, I do believe. So kudos to AMANS for having this in the wheelhouse, as Jim said, and I think just kind of setting a great standard for other organizations in terms of building it, and that money and wellness hand in hand.
I just think maybe we can have every municipal website with a page on supporting your financial health and well-being, where we can create really interactive ways for the population that we're helping to serve to know that we're all in this together. So, maybe that's a goal we can work on over the next year and a half to really establish that. It's just there, a resource for the people we're trying to help daily to make our communities more prosperous and healthy places for everyone.
So happy Financial Literacy Month. Those are our top 7 tips, very basic, no surprises there really. But Melanie, we're going to turn this back to you, and where there's any questions that Jim and I could field or suggest a resource link to.
Sure, absolutely. I think that was just a wonderful high-level overview of those tips for increasing your financial literacy. And I think that gives us a good sense of where we may want to explore further. So the one thing I'm going to ask before folks ask any questions is in the chat. I'm just going to send it right now. I would love, this is not confidential. Oh, it didn't appear as I typed it in. It's not a confidential. So if this is something you want to copy and paste and send me an email. But for our financial series that will be coming in the new year, I'd love to get a sense of what your top 2 topics are. And we will be sending polls out with through all of our municipal wellness champions. But if you're comfortable in the chat, just throw a couple numbers in there, and I will be tracking that to start to form some kind of a framework around those series. So we do have 5 minutes, so I'm sure Beth and Jim are more than open to answering any of your questions. Just feel free to throw them in the chat or take yourself off mute. Oh, I love all the numbers coming in. Awesome. I'm seeing lots of 2s. I can't remember which one that was.
There's a lot of 2s, the debt one. And that's good. I mean, it really, once again, coming out of the closet on this one, I think, Melanie, is so important. And we're recognizing that debt is something that we weren't aware of how important it was to our well-being, and planning for retirement.
I threw that one in the talking to children. I know it's not an extensive list, but I threw in the retirement one too, because that is, that is a big part of financial literacy. So any questions before we thank our presenters and wish everyone a great day?
I'm going to say number 2 is budgeting. I did go back and check.
It's budgeting. Okay. Interesting. The budgeting piece. Okay. So again, we will be doing a more comprehensive poll to get a good sense, and then probably offering 4 to 6 sessions throughout the new year.
So, and I guess if there's no questions, but thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Clearly we're on this project because we believe money is a key pillar of wellness in our communities, and we agree with the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. And what we're hearing is we got to talk more about money with our kids and in our communities, in our circles. A money wall at work is something we set up here. It might be something you want to explore as well. So, after the call, review your tip list to keep strengthening your wellness. What's your one thing? And I think that's beautiful that Melanie's going to set up some follow-up opportunities to talk more about money. Yeah, and as Jim said, just keep the conversations going and do your one thing for you. Your mind and heart will thank you.
Absolutely.
go.
Thank you, Beth.
Thanks, Melanie.
Okay. For those who are still on, I know a few people have to drop the call to get to lunch and other webinars, but I just want to thank everyone for their contribution and participating. Again, you will receive a recorded version of the webinar, a feedback link, and the slides. So we're giving you back 3 minutes of your time. So I just wish everyone a wonderful day, and hopefully we will see you in some upcoming webinars in the future. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Melanie.
We had some
And
applause there.
And
There
they
was
are
some,
disappearing. Yeah, I saw some hands clapping.
yeah, no, some hands clapping. It was good.
And some thank yous.
I'm half thinking that we're going to have to get practice on Teams some more again.
Oh my gosh, well,
Thank you,
as you
Jen.
saw, I muted everyone and I couldn't figure out how to, like,
I know.
but it's practice. It's just figuring out, making little mistakes and my brain does not love any of this virtual.
No. And I think the power of the conference last week showed you, Melanie, like over and over again, we're dying to get together.
We are, yeah.
We are
I just
so hungry to get together. So
yeah.
And I know we've done this the same as we did with you, the online. We've done it over 2 days in person, like with frontline staff from women's shelters, and it's so powerful to be together and to really relax around this.
Absolutely.
So not saying that that's possible in the ways that we've got such a big province, but just to understand when we do get together, whether it's professional development or anything, adding this to the kind of list of things that we can review and have fun with.
Absolutely. I did a session, in-person session this morning on retirement, and people couldn't stop talking. Like, it's just that you build that rapport, you create that safe space, but you rarely get even someone coming off their mic on any of our webinars because it's too intimidating. And yeah. I wonder what that's going to mean for us long term by not connecting as much. But anyway, I got to roll because I've got to get out of Dal and get home to another meeting at 12:30. But thank you so much. That was so wonderful. I'm so appreciating the partnership.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Back to the table. Bye.